It took retailers a lot longer to grasp the opportunity than we had anticipated. By the time we were exiting in 2008, we had 7 major contracts with Tesco, Esso, Welcome Break, Sainsbury's, Summerfield, Motor and Texaco. Our private equity investors made 4 times their money, and we exited for 8 times EBITDA. The company was then sold again to Whitbread and Costa in 2011. It's nice to be able to say the company I founded has been sold not once, but twice, and that's quite unusual. It's also good to see the company continue to prosper after my departure from the board. Coffee Nation was a National Business Awards winner in 2010, and the same year was one of the UK's top 100 private equity-backed companies with the fastest growing profits. Sometime after selling Coffee Nation and having spent time with other entrepreneurs, I realised that the game actually doesn't get any easier. People were still making all the same mistakes I had back at the start. So I decided to share my story. It's called Wake Up and Sell the Coffee, and was ranked one of the 6 most notable titles on entrepreneurship of 2013 by the Centre for Entrepreneurs. It doesn't romanticise entrepreneurship, rather it's heavy on tactics and light on platitudes, as this reviewer commented. I set out to capture the lessons I've learned and offer a blueprint for designing a high-growth business. I believe that if more companies can start from the right place rather than just starting, risks of failure are lower and chances of achieving high growth are greater. I also think we should encourage more entrepreneurs to aim higher and be more ambitious and look to solve bigger problems in society. Today in Britain, only 1 in 200 startups eventually reach £10 million in sales. Finally, I now mentor founders and CEOs and chair boards of ambitious high-growth companies, helping them and their companies achieve their full potential. My wife and I did get back together 8 years ago, so good coffee and love win in the end, and I did get my pilot's license. Given today is called Britain Means Business, I would like to add one footnote here. Entrepreneurship is fantastic, but it's not for everyone. Don't be an entrepreneur as someone approach and call themselves in the day because it's cool or fashionable, or you think you'll get rich. Instead, follow your heart and find your calling, whatever that may be. Britain does mean business, and it needs you to be your best at being whoever you are. Thank you.
Yeah, I need a microphone.
This gentleman last night I saw, we were private equity backed. We were private equity backed at the start. So we knew there was a time scale.
I can shout, that's all right.
Yes, sir.
How many today? Should be somebody doing 25 years today.
A gentleman asked how we'd use digital if we were at the 3 to 5 years. So do you think that's right? Yeah. It's a very good question, actually. Of course, we could never sell our product over the internet. It's a very good question, actually. What would we do? You've stumped me. I've never been on stuff actually before. It was a very physical product, so it was a cup of coffee. Pass on that one. I was thinking, I'll have to give that some thought. Okay, the lady at the front asked, did it occur to me to start another business? And yes, it did. I thought about starting one from scratch or buying another company. In the end though, I decided that what I enjoyed most was helping other companies scale up and achieving their potential. I didn't want to go, so I get a beautiful blend of some of the fun and the upside of working with a number of companies, but without perhaps 24/7 heartache and headaches that go with running it. So yeah, that's how I contribute now.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. The second I leave the desk, it will feed.
Okay, the gentleman asked, when did I grasp that business model innovation was key to the success of the business? Actually goes right back to the start with the photocopier company that I looked at. And putting that piece of kit into the store and then sharing the revenue. And I realised that to sell the coffee right, it was going to require expensive machines. But the retailer wasn't prepared to spend the money themselves on those machines because they didn't know how much coffee they'd sell. So if we owned the machines and we invested, it sent a strong message to the retailer that we believed in what we were doing. And we'd split the revenue. So it meant that we got a little bit of the revenue from every cup of coffee rather than just selling a piece of equipment. So it was a far more sustainable and long-term model. It also meant that we could get long-term contracts with the retailers. So often we'd have a 5-year deal with companies that was exclusive, so they couldn't kick us out. And that gave us a security of cash flow, which was very useful for funding the company going forward. You're asking what was the process to go through selling the company? Did we sell it too soon, and how's it done since? Yeah, so the process, as I said earlier, was that we were private equity backed, so we needed a lot of funding to get off the ground and grow fast. And if we'd carried on growing through perhaps smaller injections of business angel funding, we'd never been able to get our arms around the market and get into the commanding position we did. So that funding model worked perfectly for us. The private equity firm that backed us had a 10-year fund. That was 4 years old when they backed us, so we had 5 or 6 years to run. So that set a hard stop effectively on when we had to exit by, which of course was hugely motivational because it meant we had to grow fast, and that brought a lot of discipline and focus into the business. I mean, obviously since then the company, well, we then sold the company to another private equity firm who sold it to Whitbread. So it's great, it's great to see that it's continued to prosper. Coffee Nation, not Coffee Republics. In terms of building some coffee, in terms of building a brand, I remember actually placing a lot of focus on that in the early days, and then realising actually that brand comes later. What you've got to do is deliver on the product first. Whatever your product is, whether it's a product or a service, you've got to get the customer telling you what the magic is. A brand is built by your customers, not by you. So deliver on your promise. So for us, it was making sure that every machine was working 24/7, 365, and that that cup of coffee, wherever they saw the Coffee Nation sign, was as great as the last time they had a cup of coffee, and that our coffee was as good as what they got on the high street, and the machines were always clean and reliable and working. And if we did that every single time, then gradually the brand would build, because we delivered on our promise every time to the customer. So your customer builds the brand for you. You don't build it by imposing a message on them. Yeah? So we were clear, we'd own the space of self-serve gourmet coffee. We would deliver on their expectations, make sure we never let them drop the ball, and then the brand would build itself. So I remember one of the most amazing times in terms of building the brand was when a customer came up to me and she said, "You make my life better." And at that point I realised, now we're building a brand. Yeah? Okay, the lady's asking about the question, the role of marketing in a startup. The key thing when you start your business is you've got to get proof that it works. So we had a very small amount of money, as I said at the start, it was £50,000, £100,000, and I had to get a long way with that. And then when our private equity firm backed us, one of the things that impressed them about us as a management team was that we'd then achieved so much with only £300,000 by then in terms of business angel funding and so on. So you've got to spend very carefully, and you've got to stand back, as I said, also stand back and look at the business from afar rather than just running. A lot of people run very fast, and they run out of runway. They've spent the money, they're dead, before they've actually got the proof that they need to take them to the next stage. So you've got to really stand back and carefully think about what are the big questions that I've got to prove an answer. So for me, it was actually being able to prove that there was significant demand and that people were going to buy this coffee and keep coming back again and again and again. And that was the key thing. And so if spending money wasn't going to enable me to prove that, don't spend it. Yes, sir. No. The gentleman asked, could we have done the same with tea? One of the points that I made earlier about why we succeeded was that we were part of a growing market. And if you think back to the back end of the 90s, coffee bars were taking off fast in the UK. So we didn't create the market for gourmet coffee, we created a new niche within that category. Tea was nowhere to be seen at the time. And of course also, and people asked us, in fact we actually had some t-shirts made that said, we don't do tea. The problem with tea at the time, and to some extent is, what's the experience around it? You know, you haven't got a big sort of whizzing, steaming coffee machine and so on. It's a tea bag and hot water, whichever way you look at it. So that was the practical limitation. If we couldn't offer something, you know, exciting to the customer, we wouldn't do it. So, but the key point was that it was a coffee market that was growing fast. I think actually tea is now growing quite interestingly as a category as well. Anybody else? Well, thank you very much. Have a great day, and best of luck with your businesses. Thank you.